Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle community webinar. We're going to be reviewing our newest release, NG Firewall version 12. My name is Shannon Miles and I'm part of the product marketing team here, and I'll be your host today. I also have with us our founder and chief product officer, Dirk Morris, who will be taking us through the exciting new features of version 12. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please just make sure you select the correct audio preference on the right-hand side. If you select a telephone, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. As always, we will be answering questions, so make sure you just submit any of your questions through the panel on the right-hand side, and we'll be answering them throughout the presentation as well as at the end. And with that, I'll pass it to Dirk.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks everybody for joining. Lots of great stuff in 12.0. Hopefully we'll have plenty of time to dig through it all. We got a lot to cover. So thank you all for using Untangle. Let me just go ahead and jump right in. As always, we will be following in the changelog, which is wiki.untangle.com. If you just click on changelogs, you can see 12.0, all the changes that we've made in 12.0. We'll be reviewing most of those today. There's a ton of stuff in 12.0, so I don't know if I'll have time for everything. As always, if I skip important stuff or you have questions or whatever, just type a question in the GoToMeeting thing. We have it up on the wall, so hopefully we'll see your question come in and we'll answer as many of them as we can. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A thing. So, and as always, if we can't get to your question, just reach out to us, support@untangle.com, and hopefully we'll get you taken care of. So with that, I'm going to jump right in. We switch over to the wiki, go here to the changelogs, click on 12.0. 12.0 is a huge release. We've been working on it for a long time. Oh, let me make it bigger. Yeah, that's a good idea. There we go. Hopefully you can see it. So the major change that you will notice immediately, actually before I even dig in, let me talk about upgrades, because this is, I'm sure, going to get questioned about 1,000 times. As always, you will be able to upgrade from any 10.x and after version to 12.0. However, the second we release 12.0, upgrades are not immediately available for everyone. So the way we do it is we will gradually make the upgrade available to the whole population of Untangle users. So at some point, probably not today, you will see the upgrade available. If you have auto upgrade on, your server will just automatically upgrade. So if you don't see the upgrade today, don't panic, it's coming. Usually we roll this out over the next couple weeks to months. 12.0 is a really big upgrade, as I'll get into with some of the changes under the cover. So we're not going to roll it really fast this time. So anyway, the upgrade's coming. So with that said, let me jump into the changes. The administration interface is the first thing you'll notice. It's totally different. When you first log in, you'll get a completely new screen. This is actually my home server. So on the left, you'll notice these tabs now. So you used to see the rack was the first thing you saw. And then over on the left, you'd see applications and config. So now we've organized in a more traditional tab-based view, and there's a completely new tab called the dashboard. I'll get into that in a second. The thing you're used to seeing is under apps now. There's different ways to view apps. There's the traditional way, which is just the rack. So this is the default skin. This is the one most of everybody is used to, has Untangle been using for years, and it is the virtual rack. There's also newer skins, which are a little more mobile, responsive friendly, that you can use on your phone, that are basically the same thing. They just show all the different apps and whether they're on or not. And as always, you can see your different policies. This one only has one policy, the default rack. Config, which used to be on the left side, is now its own tab. So you can go here to config. You have all the same organization that you did before of all the settings, network, administration, and so on. And there's some new links to some of the, quote, tools that are very important to using Untangle for administrators. Think like the session viewer, the host viewer, and the new device list, which I'll get into, is new with 12.0. The big change is that reports is now its own tab. This is just to make it more accessible. So now you can click here from anywhere in the UI and go straight to reports and click on whatever you want to see. So that should make things a little bit easier to access. And hopefully this layout, I think you'll find once you get used to it, is much, much better. So let me jump back to the dashboard because that's one of the major new features. Let me just give me a second to review the questions. So on the dashboard is essentially a way to give you a view of what's going on your network, on your server. It is completely responsive, meaning you can view it on your phone and it will scale down. So, oops, let me switch back. Or you can view it on your browser. So unlike most dashboards out there, this is meant to be totally usable on your phone if you log in as the administrator on your phone or on your tablet or whatever. It's also completely customizable. So whatever's important to you is what you can put on here. Now, when you first log in, you'll just have some defaults. And the defaults actually look somewhat like this. This may be the defaults. No, it's a little bit different. Some basic information. You know, what's the name of the server? What is the model? This is a custom server, so it just says custom. But if you have a U50 or whatever, it'll say U50. So there's all sorts of information here. You know, hardware, what's your CPU like, and all these things. Statistics about who's on your network. This, again, is my home network. So there's only 3 devices currently active on it. There's been 8 active recently. It knows about 21 total devices. Each one of these is what we call a widget. So a widget is just a way to display some information. And there's a whole bunch of different widgets you can add to your dashboard. These are basically pre-made widgets that we made that display certain information. But you can also, as you see over here on the right, add widgets that basically just show reports. And reports, again, are completely customizable. So you can create your own report entries. Let's say I wanted to know what Shannon here is doing on the web all the time. I could add a widget to my dashboard that shows what Shannon's web activity is at any time, and it will update in real time, and I can just leave it up on the screen. So each one of these is updating. See, that just updated. I can also update it manually by clicking on the refresh button. This one just shows historical CPU load for the one last hour. So for those of you familiar with reports, you can basically add any report. This one I've just added a bunch of web usage and kind of bandwidth information. You can also add alerts or events. And in this case, I've added alert events because those are typically ones that I care about. There's only one event in the log in the last 24 hours, and that is that it discovered a new device. That's a new functionality. I'll get into that a little bit in a few minutes. So that's the dashboard. Extremely powerful. You go up here to manage widgets. You can click add. You got a whole bunch of different widget types. Some of them you can only add once, so I can only add, I've added pretty much every type of widget, but a bunch of them you can add more than once. So if I click on report, I can pick some properties, and then I can pick whatever report I want to see. Shield SAN sessions, just pick anything. And then it'll refresh the dashboard, and I added it at the bottom, so if I go down here, I'll see my widget at the bottom now. And there you can see how much the Shield has been scanning sessions. So whatever's important to you, again, all the stuff with conditions, you can say, I want to see this specific policy or this specific user or this specific time. You can pretty much do whatever you want since reports are completely customizable, and then you can add them to your dashboard, or you can just add the reports that already exist. So this is going to be something we're going to be investing heavily in, is the dashboard, because it gives you a very high level view of what's going on the system, and you can customize it. It turns out a lot of different people use Untangle for a lot of different purposes. So whatever's important to you is what you can display on your dashboard, and it gives you a very easy way when you log in to see what's going on. There's some questions about how many widgets can you add. There's no limit right now. And the way it does it is, if you notice, and this machine, this server, it's a little U25. It's actually pretty fast, so you won't be able to see it. But if you look closely, you'll see them flash green. Each one will flash green as it refreshes, and so it refreshes them sequentially. So it's not like it's going to kill your server by trying to load up 50 different reports at the same time. So you'll see it as it goes through, and unfortunately, it just flashes so quick you won't see it. But and this little thing rotates when it's refreshing. So you can add a ton of them, whatever's important to you. Obviously, you got to organize them up here and manage reports and drag them around so that they're in the right order for you. And then it depends on how wide your screen is, the layout. because as you get different layouts, it'll show 2 wide and then 3 wide and so on. I mean, if you have a really wide screen, it'll show tons. So you can see as I drag it, it changes the layout completely. Oops. So we're really excited about this. Love any feedback as you guys get 12.0 and start to use it. We're going to be investing pretty heavily in this in future versions, so we would love your thoughts, any type of widgets you'd like to see, kind of any feedback.
There is a question about the skins, how you change that.
Oh, okay.
I want to show that.
So these skins, if I go into config administration skins, there's a whole bunch of different skins. A lot of these were developed by community members. We still maintain those. The new one is called Material, which is named after material design, which is trendy nowadays. The default skin is this one, which is the rack. If you switch to Material skin, which this server's on, when you click to the Apps tab, it will show you a much cleaner, simpler layout. This is meant to kind of reduce all the noise, and it's also much more responsive. So if you look on this on your phone, it's much easier than the rack to deal with. So this is one of our new skins, the Material skin. And all the different skins have different look and feels and so on.
There were a couple questions on whether or not you could set up a dashboard or widgets per user.
Yeah, the question is how many widgets can be set up, and is it per user, or is it just for admin?
For the administrators. So the dashboard is global to all administrators. You can set up as many widgets as you want. I mean, I haven't added 1,000 or anything, but I don't see any reason why it would be a problem. It basically stores them in your settings. So when you go click Manage Widgets and you add a widget and you drag it around, you click Apply, it saves that. So next time any administrator logs in, they will see the dashboard and the updates. So it works pretty much like any other setting in a traditional sense. We're not planning a specific mobile app for Untangle at this time, but we are planning on making it completely responsive. So the goal is that at some point, everything will be designed on being responsive. The login page, the block pages, the administration, and we're well on our way at this point to achieving that, but we still got some things to work on. All right. Let me move on just because we have a lot to cover. I would encourage you to play with the dashboard when you get a chance. You can also check it out at demo.untangle.com. Don't everybody log in at once. It'll probably kill the poor little server. A little bit about behind the scenes on 12.0. 12.0 is a major revision in the sense that we changed a lot under the covers. You won't notice this as a user specifically, but under the covers is a brand new OS, a much newer kernel, and much newer libraries. We've changed a lot, newer database. So all these changes help Untangle in the long run. The difference that you may see is that the new kernel will have a slightly different hardware support profile. So when installing Untangle now on different hardware, hopefully we support a little bit more hardware than we did in the past. As always, we can't guarantee what Untangle does and doesn't work on. We can test servers here. We can't make it work on everything. It's just unfortunately not something that we can do, but hopefully the new 12.0 will work on more servers than the old 11.2. When you upgrade, you will get the new OS, you will get the new kernel. It will not boot the new kernel until you reboot. So you don't need to reboot. It's just next time you reboot, it'll automatically boot the new kernel. If you have any issues or you just want to stay on the old kernel, you can absolutely do that. So the long and short of it, all this is hidden from you, doesn't really affect you. It's just a good thing. It means it'll run slightly faster and have newer stuff on the inside. Moving right along, some of the other cool features. Directory connector. We're continuing to add the things that directory connector can connect to. So I'm using the material skin here. If you want to see the more traditional view, you just go down to, oh, I don't have directory connector installed. Oh, I should show you the new way to install apps. You click install apps, you click on the app you want to install, and you click done. That used to be done with the left-hand side. Now you just click the install apps thing, and it installs in the rack just like it always used to. I'll switch back while that's installing to the other server. So these are all the same. The new one is called the Google connector, which allows your directory connector to connect to Google. So this one's already configured. If it wasn't configured, here's what you do. You click reconfigure. It's going to ask, Google's going to basically say, are you sure you want to give your Untangle server access to your Google account? You have to click allow. That way it knows it can access, or your Untangle now has the ability to access your Google Drive. And I'll get into why this is useful in like 2 seconds. This one's probably not set up, so I can actually show this one. So that one says unconfigured here. I give it permission. Google now has permission, and it comes back, and now it's configured. So I've just connected this Untangle to my Google Drive account. You have to log into Google Drive. I was already logged in. That's why it didn't ask me to log in. But at this point, there's 2 reasons it's really nice to connect with Google Drive with Directory Connector. One is configuration backup can now back up to your Google Drive. So here it's already enabled. If it's configured, if the Google connector is configured, it will automatically upload your backups to your Google Drive. My Drive, configuration backups. And here you'll see all my backups from my home server every day. So if I ever need to go back and load a backup, and obviously we store these on untangle.com under your account too, but this is if you just want to have an additional place on your Google Drive. The other thing that now stores stuff on Google Drive is reports. So previously we had all sorts of ways to email out information, and that was all very cumbersome because email is just not a good way to send large files. So we replaced all that functionality with Google Drive, which works much, much better. The 2 things it does is if you go under data, you can upload your data to Google Drive, and you can upload the CSVs. CSVs are basically just, the CSVs, Excel files of all the different tables of everything that's going on in your Untangle. Some people like to store those. Some people are required to store those. So you can now choose those 2 options, and let me show you what that would look like. Go back to my Drive, say reports backups, which is the default directory name. You can change it. Here's the CSV file. That's from January, but they're all in here. And here's the actual data. The data is, for power users, is literally just the SQL data of your reports. And if for whatever reason you want to reload old data, you can do so. So if you, years from now, had to go back and research what happened on some specific day 3 years ago, you can load, you need to load the same version of Untangle you're running back then, go back here, click Browse, open the file, upload it, and it's going to restore that data into your database, and then you can go into reports and actually look at the 3-year-old data. So I think this will be a great way for people who want to save data for years. As you'll see, the data is actually compressed fairly well. This is obviously my home network, so it's not very big, so it's only 1 or 2 megabytes a night, but it compresses quite small, even for large sites. And Google Drive storage is extremely cheap in terms of gigabytes. Give me a second to read through some of the questions.
A lot of questions about Office 365.
That would be cool, and Dropbox, and the million other things that we'd love to, and Facebook, and at this point we support Google. Yes, I'd love to tell you we'll support everything else, but it's a pretty big effort for us to support any of these. So we're taking one at a time, and we're focusing on Google first because it's the most common. It also is extremely cheap to store data in Google Drive, and free, actually, for almost everybody, because the space requirements that you'll need are likely pretty small. All right.
Did you want to do a poll really quick?
Sure, good idea.
All right, so we just have a few polls that we're going to sprinkle in here. Let's see if it's working. Maybe not. Let's see. Here we go. All right, so if you guys could just take quick second to answer this question. We're just very curious on what type of Untangle user are you? If you currently aren't using Untangle but are interested, if you're recently new to Untangle, if you've been using us for a while, or if you're an advanced user. So if you could just take a quick second and answer that question for us. We love gathering information to figure out what type of users we're talking to on these webinars. All right, thank you. And let's see. We have a good amount of intermediate and advanced users on, so that's great for us to hear. And with that, I'll pass it back to Dirk.
Thanks everybody for answering that. We were just kind of curious. It's good to see we got a lot of the power users on. Hopefully we have a bunch of our regulars on. I haven't been looking at all the questions quite as well. There were a couple questions about data. As always in reports nowadays on modern versions, you can store as much as you want. The difference between what gets uploaded to Google and what you store locally is what gets stored locally is stored in a way that it's highly indexed. So what that means is we store a ton of metadata about the data so that when you go to reports over here and you say, I want to see what the top websites are for Shannon for this week 3 months ago, it can look that report up and show you in real time very quickly. So the effect of all that metadata is it makes your reports run fast, but it takes more space. So as always, you can store nowadays as much data as you want on your server pretty much. You just need to make sure you have space because all those indexes take a lot of room. So if you have a terabyte, this is really a complete non-issue. But some people run their Untangles on smaller, 32-bit or 32 gig mSATA drives and things like that. So in that case, you need to be a little cognizant of how much data you store on the server. So the Google connector is completely separate. It's just an additional option. But you can always store a lot of data here locally. I store a year just because why not? It's a pretty small network, and I think I only have 32 or 64 gigs, and that's plenty of room. But it depends on your network and how much data you're passing and how much data you're logging. The data that gets uploaded to Google is encrypted on its way to Google. All right, moving on. Tons of questions, sorry. The reports. So remember 11.2, for those of you who were around for the last webinar, the reports was the big announcement about 11.2 and how we were moving to new reports, which are all about being customizable and creating new reports and being real time. There's no scheduled task. You basically just click on them and you view exactly what you want to view. And it's all about being customizable and being able to deep dive in those reports. With 12.0, that process is essentially done. We've actually removed the old reports implementation. So that's obviously a win for a lot of people who don't have that nightly task that creates a ton of load and takes a ton of space and memory and things like that. But it also means if you love those reports, make sure to turn off your upgrades. I'm sure there are people who love the old reports. I don't think once you use the new reports for a while and you get used to it that you will even dream about going back. The new reports are just far, far, far better. But some people have their processes down and they don't want to change them. So just be aware that if you upgrade to 12.0, the old reports essentially go away. That includes the PDF summaries. We do send out new summaries. They're very brief. Let me see if I can find one. That basically say, here's the high-level stuff that's going on your network. Click here to view the reports. And the reports are, let me see, those are the old ones. Where are the new ones? I don't know, I probably should have one of these ready, but anyway, there's a very brief email, HTML email that basically says, here's what's going on, and click here to view the reports. We don't attach the CSV anymore, so we don't have any issues to deal with there. You can put that on Google Drive. So it'll work much more smoothly than the old reports. But just be aware that your old reports are officially going away when you upgrade to 12.0. All right, device list. This is a cool functionality that we've just added. And basically this is something we're going to be building upon in the future. So it's pretty elemental right now. Essentially the idea is previously you had the host table. Oops, that's what I wanted. And now you have a new tool called the device list. So the host viewer is there. This is, again, my home network, so it's not very big, so don't laugh. But my Sonos, I run Sonos, which is a stereo system, and you can see all my Sonos speakers phoning home, and they're all known and online. And this is, the host viewer is determined by unique IP that it's seeing locally. So the device list is essentially unique MAC addresses. So the two entities are defined by basically IP and MAC address. The difference is the device list is actually saved on the disk. So if we see a new MAC on one of your non-WAN interfaces, meaning a local interface, we're going to say, wow, we've never seen this device before. Let's add it to the device list and let's start tracking information about it. So when you go in here, you'll see every device ever seen on your network. Now, something to be aware of is that MAC addresses don't go across layer 2 segments. So if you have a network with routers in the middle, you will not be able to see your end devices. So this really only applies to flat networks because that's just the way MAC addresses work. So if you have a big network, you could totally just see one device in here, which is the next closest router. So this really applies really to more flat, more small networks that have flat structures. So anyway, again, this is my home network. You could see all the different devices it's ever seen on my home network and their host names of when the last time they were online. You can also now associate usernames with devices. This is just nice if, obviously at home, I don't share my laptop with other people. It's always D. Morris. So the nice thing is I can just now set this value to whatever. Say that's my laptop, so I actually need to set this. I can click save, and now the username will automatically be assigned to any traffic coming from this MAC address. So it's just a nice way to handle usernames if you aren't sharing devices. The other thing is it stores just some meta information about, what type of thing this is and what the user agent is. It works very similarly to the host table. It's just this information is permanent. The nice thing is that when a new host comes online, we can say, oh, it's this MAC address. Let's load the information from the device table. The other nice thing is I actually have it set up to send me an alert when I see a device I've never seen before. So there's a new alert rule, and the alert rules is not on by default because those of you on big networks will get completely spammed. Here it is, new device discovered. That basically says, wait, if you're adding something to the device table, send an alert. In fact, on my dashboard, we saw one of those, which yesterday I had a new device connect to my Wi-Fi, which was, let's see what it was. It was a Sonos, yeah, so it was one of my music controllers. So no big deal, it's just great to see that, hey, I can now see what devices are on my network and help me track them and so on. And we'll be building on that functionality more in the future. Any questions on that stuff before I jump on? There's a couple questions about what can you do in the device. So the device, oops, wrong place. The device list is different than the host viewer. You can actually edit and change settings here and save them. So the effect that we'll have is essentially that when a new host comes online, it says, oh, here's my MAC address. It will see that, oh, and you can actually set this. Like in this case, it didn't know who made this MAC address, so it doesn't know anything about it. It looks like it's a Mac device, so I could put Apple here if I wanted and hit save. So you can actually edit this information, which is a little different than the host view, which is basically just a current view of what's on the network, and those go away. So a little different. We're going to be building more on this in the future, just allow people to store and edit metadata about the different devices on the network. And since MAC addresses don't really change as often as IPs, it's a little more useful to do so by MAC address. We changed the way languages are done. Those of you who have helped us translate Untangle into the many languages, thank you for your help. We're going to try to make this process easier by basically, instead of having a separate PO file for every single app, there's just one PO file now called Untangle. So that gets rid of a lot of duplication and managing strings and just headaches. It's much simpler now, and hopefully we had a lot of localization fixes along with that, so hopefully your experience in other languages will be improved at this point.
Before you get into the next feature, you want to do another poll really quick?
Sure.
So again, if you guys could take just a brief minute to answer this question, where are you using or planning to use Untangle? Please select whatever option is most relevant to you. We love gathering this information. Let's see, mostly everyone, a lot of people are saying my business. Good amount of home, about 36% home. All right, just a few more seconds. All right, thanks so much, you guys. Seems that most people are using them in their own businesses, about 40% in clients and 35% in home and 20% in schools. So that's a good variation. So back to you, Dirk.
Thanks for answering that. I'll use that opportunity to plug our new home package for your home users. If you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. It's not specifically related to 12.0, but if you go to untangle.com/buy, you can get information on the home package for home users. SSL Inspector, previously called HTTPS Inspector. Now it's called SSL Inspector because it inspects more than just HTTPS. So we had to rename it because now it inspects SMTP over SSL. If you have a local email server, this is good because now you can accept SSL connections and spam blocker and virus blocker and all those things can scan it. Essentially what it does is it un-SSLs it, passes it through those other apps, and then re-SSLs it, re-encrypts it on the other side. So it works very similar to HTTPS, it's just now it supports SMTP, and this essentially means you don't have to now block SMTP over SSL, which you had to do previously because you wanted spam blocker to be able to scan those emails. Now you can just allow it and it'll automatically handle it. Luckily, handling SSL with SMTP is a little easier than HTTP because servers don't tend to check their certificates like they do in HTTP. So you don't have to deal with pushing out your cert and all that stuff. It's much simpler, which is nice. So for those of you with local email servers that run spam blocker and virus blocker and those things, this will be a nice feature for you, and it's not nearly as much of a headache as dealing with SSL inspection on the whole. There are a whole bunch of other improvements we made to SSL Inspector. It's an area that we are going to be investing in highly. The whole world is going SSL, so really the ability to control and monitor and see what's going on and protect your network, handling SSL is critical to that. So we continue to work on improving SSL Inspector and all the different ways to handle SSL, so we give you the tools you need to control what's going on in your network. So give it a spin. The new SSL Inspector should work pretty much seamlessly on upgrade. You'll notice the name changes and it'll start scanning SMTP. Oh, this is a cool feature. Config email. So previously, for those of you who've been using Untangle for a long time, Untangle sends emails for a whole variety of reasons, like to alert you when something happens, which, by the way, you do need to set your administrator email. We now ask that in the wizard. You don't have to set it, but if you do set it, it will now automatically send alerts to those emails, so you probably want to set it. But it also sends emails for like reports and quarantine digests and things like that. And it's always been a big headache for Untangle users to go in and say, I need to tell my Untangle server how to send email, because every network's different and some ISPs don't allow port 25 traffic and some are only allowed to relay through a certain server and things like that. We have this new option called send email using the cloud-hosted mail relay server, which essentially is a service available for Untangle users that you can relay mail through an encrypted tunnel. So essentially, it's a custom email server we wrote for our Untangle users that you can send email through. So that is now the new default option. So essentially, it will work. It'll tunnel out to our encrypted server and send the email from there. So this is nice for ISPs and home users and things that have networks that block SMTP. This will just work. So that's cool. That's a nice new feature. You'll notice it right away when you start receiving emails from your Untangle server. Quarantine interface actually received a lot of nice updates as well. We worked on cleaning that up and updating it, so it should work a lot smoother now. IPsec now supports a new protocol the 10th million protocol, GRE. It's a great way to create tunnels between networks. For those of you who don't know what GRE is, it won't really affect you, but if you want a new way to tunnel traffic, GRE offers a great alternative, and GRE with IPsec encryption as well. It's essentially useful if you have a remote network that you want to tunnel through Untangle. Just looking at questions real quick. Are we all good on questions so far?
Yeah.
All right, they're answering them as fast as they can, guys. They're pouring in, and we have a couple people answering questions as quickly as they can. So thanks for your patience. Virus blocker now includes a new cloud scanner. Again, this is completely transparent to you. It'll just start working on upgrade. Essentially, what it is we still, inside Virus Blocker, have the Bitdefender engine, which itself has multiple layers. It uses signatures. It also uses heuristics. It also does, it basically runs executables in somewhat of an emulator to see if it's doing things malicious. So Bitdefender does a lot of very fancy stuff to detect if it's malware. Addition to that, we now take metadata about the file being downloaded. So that can be a fingerprint, where it came from, and then we ask our cloud service, which is hooked in with other millions of endpoints and millions of Untangle endpoints, and says, have you seen anything about this URL, or have you seen this fingerprint, or does anybody else think that this fingerprint is malicious? And the cloud scanner is another way to detect malware, essentially, and it's more responsive because it sees more global context about, hey, wait a minute, 2 minutes ago this file had never been seen before, and now it's been downloaded 100 times from this one URL. Let's go check it out, and let's go see what every other virus vendor on the planet thinks about it, and let's put those in our cloud. So it's a new way to basically detect malware, and it's just built right into Virus Blocker. It'll automatically now consult the cloud service every time it does a traditional scan as well. And if either one returns that the file is malicious, it's going to be considered malicious. So that's a very nice improvement for those of you running Virus Blocker. And again, that doesn't include Virus Blocker Lite. Virus Blocker Lite is CLAM based, which CLAM is great. It's not our project. We love it. Those guys are great. They do a good job. It's just not quite as good as the premium functionality. Some changes to licensing. Essentially, what we've done in 12.0 is, so previously the answer was, oh, you bought 500 seats and you have 550 devices. Well, you need to go and bypass 50 of those. And so a lot of users came back and said, that's really quite a headache. We only have 550 at a few times. And it would just basically warn you, and then you have to go in and bypass them. Now, essentially, that's automatic, so you don't have to worry about it. Once you go over 500, it'll automatically start bypassing the, quote, excess devices. So you don't have to worry about it. It is very transparent about what's going on. It actually sends you an alert when this happens. So if you do care, you can take care of it. You can always still go in and bypass devices if you don't want them counted, so that hasn't changed. Let me bring up the host viewer. Essentially, in the host viewer, there's a new column called active. Now this network only has 2 active devices currently, which are my 2 machines at home, which are still on. Actually, a lot of these devices are on, but they're probably not talking to the internet recently. So what active means is this device is online and it has talked to the internet recently, and this is what's counted against licenses. So even though you can see there's 15 devices on this network, only 2 of them are, quote, active. So I think if I go back to dashboard, currently active 2. So these are the metrics by which licensing operates. So it's all very transparent. So if you care about this stuff, you can go into show host. Show host will tell you exactly who's active. There's also a column that's not hidden by, or not shown by default, called entitled status. Basically means, are you entitled to, quote, paid functionality, assuming you have any paid functionality. This will almost always be true. The case where it's not true is going to be if you bought an up to 500 license and you have 550 devices. Those excess devices, as they come online, will be not entitled to paid functionality. They will still be able to get to the internet. They'll still get access to all the free apps. It will just automatically bypass them. And again, you can go back in and say, wait a minute, I want to choose which ones, and add bypass rules if you want to do it that way. Oh yeah, adding bypass rule is simple. Just go into config, the new config, network, go into bypass rules. So let's say you have an open Wi-Fi and you just don't care about the guest and the Wi-Fi. You can go guest Wi-Fi. I don't know, maybe you want to do it by interface if you have a specific interface for those, maybe source address 192.168.1.100. Maybe it's that whole subnet. I can't type. Bypass. So that would be done. You'd bypass that whole group. They wouldn't be counted towards licensing because they would not be considered active. You would still see them in the host table, but they would not be counted as active.
There's a question on if they can get alerted when an unlicensed device joins the network.
Yes, actually it's on by default, I believe. Let me double check that. Apps, reports, and then I click on alert rules, license exceeded, session not entitled. Basically, this is set, and by the way, it'll set so it only sends it occasionally, just in case you go over, you don't want to get literally 10,000 emails in your email box. So you can go in here and turn this frequency limit off if you want. And actually thresholds are something I need to talk about too. So this by default will say if entitled equals false, which is the thing I showed you earlier, that means it's not entitled to paid functionality because it was over your limit. It'll send you an email. And you can turn that off if you just don't care. Let's just say, you know, you're a church and on Sundays you don't care that 2,000 people come in, and you can turn that off, and it will still automatically protect the first 50 or however many you bought and just deal with it after that. So hopefully this will simplify your life a little bit and be a little bit more transparent about what isn't counted as quote active. No, entitled, sorry, the question was, will they bypass free apps like Firewall? No, entitled equals false means they're not entitled to paid functionality, so they won't get, say, web filter or bandwidth control or application control, but they will still get free apps like Captive Portal, Firewall. The thinking there is those are free, and basically those should be, you should be entitled to those no matter what, not just penalized because you're buying paid apps. So you still maintain that functionality. That's the thinking there. All right, moving on. Real quick before I move on from reports alerts, there's a new ability in reports called thresholds, which basically mean if something, what's a good example? I don't see a good example here, but basically let's say you wanted to add an alert that says somebody's creating a lot of SSH sessions. You could go in here and create for session, I won't do this in real time, but actually there's a default rule in new installs that basically says something like if somebody creates 100 SSH sessions within a minute, then that's something pretty suspicious and I want to be alerted on it. So you can now set these fields and it will say things like, okay, this one client created 100 SSH sessions or IRC sessions. Something a little fishy is going on there. You should probably look in the reports. So that's a nice new functionality. It also can be used to say, well, I don't really care if they do it once. Like let's say there was one porn site visited, literally one URL. Well, that could have been an ad loaded off another site. Maybe you want to know more when somebody goes to a porn site 100 times, meaning actually visits it, and it loads all the images and things like that. So thresholds are just useful for determining when and when you don't want to be alerted on certain things, or determining if something's suspicious because it's being done a ton, like logging into a website or something like that. I already covered this. Configuration backup, back to the Google Drive, super cool. Application control we simplified. It used to have a block and tar pit settings. Now it just says block. Essentially the thinking is that people block it and then they get disappointed when it doesn't block, because block used to reset the connection, and pretty much all applications then know that they've been blocked and figure out a way to get around it. Tar pit basically is the new block. So those two settings have been merged into one. It will always tar pit, which essentially means it doesn't actually notify the application that's been blocked. It quietly drops the data and says, thanks for the data. And so the application thinks it's talking to the server, but it's not. It's a much more effective way of blocking. It also lowers the load on the server. Pretty much all benefits. So we removed those two settings. There's now just one called block, which basically means what tar pit used to mean. Web filter now blocks QUIC by default. QUIC is an alternate HTTP protocol. We just had a lot of reports about when I block Google or do this, it doesn't get blocked. That's because Google and Chrome use a different protocol because they're special. So now it just blocks that by default, just so you can control the web filter. You can choose to unblock it if you want. But there's a bunch of new options about which sessions that are bypassed get logged. I won't go too much into that, but you can see it in the advanced settings in network. For those of you who care about knowing every little piece of information that Untangle sends, including its own DNS queries and people that looked up DNS queries to Untangle itself, all of those sessions are, quote, bypassed, meaning they're not scanned at layer 7 because they don't actually go through Untangle. You can now log those as well, everything. You can log literally everything, every statistic about every session that Untangle ever saw. And there's a couple different parameters to control exactly what gets logged. I would caution you, don't just turn those on because you'll log a lot more data than you thought. But if you really care, you can turn those on. The session viewer is way faster. Unfortunately, this network's tiny, which is kind of a bummer. But when you click on sessions, you can now view sessions and you can see how quickly it refreshes, and you can leave auto refresh on. And here you can see the only one, and here you can see the username is here. I don't use Captive Portal, I don't use Directory Connector, I don't use any of that on this network. The reason the username is now known is because I've set the username in the device list. So it's super easy for home users to now have usernames in the reports because you can just associate a username with the device. So that's kind of cool. But as you can see, everything loads super fast, and this is true even when you have 8,000, 10,000, 20,000 sessions. So hopefully for the frequent administrators, you will enjoy that improvement. There's other tons of improvements that I probably didn't cover or forgot about, but I think that's a pretty good summary of all the stuff in 12.0.
Before we get into questions, we have just one more poll. If you guys bear with me, and I know you guys have a million questions, and we're going to try and get through all of them. So just quickly, we're just very curious on how many Untangle instances you manage. So if you could quickly answer those, we'll get right back into answering all your questions. Let's see, just a few more seconds. All right, seems that 1 to 3 seems to be the most popular answer. Let's see, and then followed by that, 4 to 6. We have a few people that have over 11 though, so that's pretty interesting.
Wow, a lot of people. Cool.
Yeah. All right, so thank you so much for that. We're trying to gather this information just for future development. Back to you, Dirk.
Just looking through some of the questions. There is no session cap limit in the session viewer or anywhere on Untangle. Obviously, how many sessions or bandwidth is supported depends a lot on your hardware, but there is no limit. There's no device limit either, so you can have as many devices / hosts on your network as you want or can support with your hardware. We have sites with 10,000 plus devices, and we have sites with 3 devices. So Untangle has a huge range of different networks that it's run on. Oh yeah, Directory Connector. There's a question about Directory Connector. Does it also support integration with Google Apps and logging in with Gmail accounts or Google accounts? Not currently. It's something we really want to do. It's something Google does not want people to do. That's just not how OAuth, which is the protocol used to authenticate against Google, works. But I think we have a way that we're going to be able to accomplish it. But it doesn't allow you to integrate with your Google accounts yet. It's something we're looking into quite seriously. We have to figure out a way to do it, even though Google doesn't kind of want you to do it. There are a lot of users, especially schools, that have 1,000 Google accounts, and they want their students to log in with their Gmail accounts to the Captive Portal, so they can associate the username with the device and things like that. Totally agree with all that. Great use case. We just got to figure out how to do it. Reading through some of the other questions.
So a lot of questions on the home package if you want to briefly.
That'd be a good idea.
Go over
and we can
that.
talk about the other
Yeah.
thing that we have. If you go to untangle.com/buy, you can now see we've tried to make buying, this isn't a specifically 12.0 thing, but we've tried to make the process of buying much simpler and much more transparent about what you want where. So you can go here and say, I want a U25W, which is our new appliance. If you haven't checked it out, you totally should. It's an amazing little device. That's what we're actually playing with. This is what I'm demoing, is a U25W that I'm running at home. So you can pick your product and then pick all your different attributes, and it shows you the price. You can go to complete package, and you can pick your band, and it will show you the pricing, and you say, I want monthly, I want annual, or so on. So we now have more bands, which is much more friendly to those. The bands were very big earlier. Now they're much more fine-grained. There is a new band called Home, and Home is for residential, non-commercial use only. So you can't run this if you do your business out of your home. You can't run this in commercial settings. This is really for Untangle enthusiasts who want to run Untangle at home. So please don't abuse that. We really want this to be available for home users and enthusiasts. We had to work very hard with all our OEM partners to allow us to do this, so please don't abuse it. It is very cheap at $5 a month. You can buy it a month. You can buy a year of it for 50 bucks. You can buy 5 years for $200, which is pretty amazing in my book. That's basically the cost of the new router. So enjoy that. It is the full, complete package, meaning you get all the paid functionality. You can run it at home and play with it. A lot of people that sell Untangle in a commercial setting also maybe want to run it at home, or maybe you have kids or whatever. So that's a great new thing that we have available as of this month. So please enjoy it.
Cool. So we on that note, we'll go through. We do have a special offer going on right now that Dirk was just mentioning, the appliance that he's running on at home, the U25. This is our newest appliance that we just launched last week. It is our smallest appliance, and we're very excited. It comes in either a wired or wireless version, U25 or U25W, and our special offer right now is that if you purchase one of these appliances with a complete package, you'll also get a free 25 device 1-year license for Total Defense antivirus for endpoints. This is a great value, $150 value. I'm sure many of you guys will have many questions on this, so please make sure you go to the website, untangle.com/U25 offer, and all of the details and information about the offer can be found there. If you go onto the buy page that Dirk was just showing, can you show that really quick?
Yeah, let me switch back.
All right. So if you go to the buy page and select U25
W, of course.
With a complete package, I believe you add it to the cart and a special offer will appear, and then that is where you have the option to purchase this special offer. So again, if you have any questions, you can contact us at sales@untangle.com. But we'll go back to our million questions now.
And again, this is a U25W that I'm demoing. So you can see the dashboard is extremely fast. And the reports are extremely fast. And I'm running this wireless at home and really like it. I'm looking through some of the questions. The home package includes everything in the complete package. So yes. The home package is not a device band in the traditional sense. So it is for home users only. It is not like X number of devices. That's not how it's sold. It's specifically for home users. So just keep that in mind. It's not a band. It's not like, well, I'm a business and I only have this many devices. Can I buy the home? It's specifically for home users. It's not a band. That's as much as I can say on that subject. Tons of questions. So if we don't get to these, and we obviously won't get to most of them, just contact us at sales@untangle.com if it's a sales question. If it's a tech question, maybe support@untangle.com, or just jump on the forums. I'll be on the forums literally right after this, and we'll see. I can answer any questions on there as well. There's a lot of questions about future functionality, a lot of good questions. I won't go into the roadmap right now. A lot of that, obviously, a lot of the future functionality people are asking about is cool. We'd love to do all that stuff, and we're working on some of it. I won't give any comments about what's coming in future versions right now, but yes, a lot of that we agree with. Great questions. We appreciate your feedback. We're working on a lot of it, is all I can say. And if you have feedback, I always love feedback. We're working on the dashboard. We've already got a ton of really cool stuff in the dashboard in 12.1 that we wanted to fit in 12.0, just didn't have time. If you have feedback about the dashboard, things you'd like to see, just crazy ideas, pass it along. Also feedback@untangle.com, or just jump on the forums and tell us what you think.
Many questions on v12 when it's rolling out. Again, we'll mention that
I should wrap up with that probably, because that's by far the number one. So we roll out upgrades gradually. You do not need to install fresh. You can if you want. If you want to, you can install fresh 12 and restore your 11.2 settings on your 12.0 if you absolutely want it right now. However, you don't need to do that. We will be rolling the upgrade. It's just an automatic / push button upgrade. It'll happen automatically if you have auto upgrades on. If you don't, you will see the upgrade available sometime in the coming weeks, and you can upgrade then.
Just a reminder, there were some questions about upgrading from 9.4. 9.4 is end of life, and it requires a fresh install from 9.4 to 10. So if you're trying to go to 12 from 9.4, you're going to need a completely new install. So just a reminder on that in case you missed that announcement last year.
Yes, and there are no updates, just to reiterate, it is end of life, so there's no updates to 9.4, so please upgrade. We're not doing security updates for 9.4. If you're running 9.4 in the field, you don't really need to panic, but you need to upgrade at the next earliest convenience.
If you could just go back quickly to the slide deck.
Sure.
I know people are asking a lot of questions about upcoming webinars and everything and support on that. We have a couple videos on the resource page for v12 that show quick videos on how to upgrade to v12, the new dashboards, how to make the widgets and stuff like that. As always, we have the wiki, the forums, and the changelog that show and answer all of the questions. We have our guys on the forums answering questions all day. And we have 3 upcoming tech talks in the next few months around all these new features that are in version 12. Dashboards is in a couple weeks, March 24th. Create your own reports in April 14th. And then the new renamed SSL inspector, May 10th. You can find that on our website on untangle.com/webinars. I'll also we'll be sending a follow-up email with all of these links and resources in the email. So I know we have a million questions that we probably didn't get to. I don't know if you see any other last minute ones.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of technical questions that would take a good 10 minutes to get into each one. I would encourage you to jump on either with support or just jump on the forums and we'll try to get you sorted. As always, we love hearing from people, so don't hesitate to reach out on some other medium.
Yeah, so sorry we couldn't get to all your questions. As Dirk said, please just reach out to us on forums or email us at sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com if you have a specific technical question. Thanks, Dirk, for the demo, and thanks, team, for answering questions, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everybody, for joining.